Hello again. All right, I'm just going to get to the next speaker, which I'm really excited to hear. We have our keynote speaker is Haroon Moghul, and I'm going to read a little bio because it's my favorite thing ever. I didn't write it. Haroon Moghul is an internationally recognized expert on Islam, foreign policy, and the Muslim world. He's appeared on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and Al Jazeera. His writings have been published in Quartz, Boston Review, Foreign Policy, Salon, Guardian, and CNN. He's the author of a novel, The Order of Light, which was also translated into French, and an upcoming memoir, How to Be Muslim. Currently a senior correspondent at Religious Dispatches, Haroon has been a fellow at the Center on National Security at Fordham Law and with the New America Foundation in the National Security Studies Program. Haroon is the co-founder of Avenue M, which makes short films about identity in America. And this is my favorite part. It's part of the bio. I'm so sorry to all the single women out there. He's married. This was written into the bio, which is my favorite thing ever. And also allergic to nearly everything and lives in Brooklyn. So with that, welcome the not single Haroon Moghul.
One time, I made a joke about being single, and my father yelled at me for the next 3 years. So there's your answer, Rizwan. I'm still afraid of my dad, 3,000 miles away. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. It is an honor to be here. Thank you to the good people at ISPU for putting this together, to the Bay Area for coming out, and to California for existing. I love your palm trees, your sunshine, but especially your 55 electoral votes, which arrive late at night on the East Coast to just drive it home. Feels good. May the alliance between sea and shining sea endure. We need ISPU and California now more than ever. In case you've missed it, and basically therefore missed all of media for 7 months, in which case, congratulations. Donald Trump has been talking about us. Given Mr. Trump's popularity, I can't believe I have to say this, the ISPU report is more important than ever. It's not just valuable research, it's going to shape the future of our community and our place in this country. I am here to tell you that the most recent report, the one that ISPU has been talking about, Reimagining Muslim Spaces, whether that's an actual space or somewhere in your heart, neither the space nor the heart bear any resemblance to the institutions Donald Trump believes should be monitored and maybe even closed down. According to ISPU research, mosque attendance in the US correlates positively with higher levels of civic engagement, higher levels of volunteerism, better mental health outcomes, less anger and sadness, a greater resilience against involvement in risky behavior, and of course, and we have to say this, unfortunately, but that's the reality of the world we live in, mosques are a barrier to radicalization. They're not a place where radicals are produced, but they're institutions that help our communities produce stronger young people who are immune to or more resistant to bad ideas. Therefore, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, Fox News, Ben Carson are wrong. That's it. It's like my whole speech, I should go home. I didn't even get a note card yet. But there is a downside. There's always a downside. Mosques are not being utilized to their full potential. We can use mosques to develop citizenship, civic participation, civic identity, political participation, electoral outcomes, policy outcomes, local politics, national politics, all those good things. But as ISPU has found, mosques can alienate people. They can drive people away. They can have the opposite outcome. The research conducted by ISPU suggests that women, converts, and young people often feel alienated at the mosque. If you are a young female convert to Islam, congratulations. We have no idea why you are sticking around, but thank you. The rest of us beg your forgiveness. The only people, it turns out, who don't feel alienated from the mosque are older men who were born Muslim. You know who you are. Now, it should be clear to you why this is a problem. If we're not reaching converts, we're not growing. Many people who are born Muslim don't stay Muslim. If we're not reaching young people, there won't be any people left to run, fund, or even fill the mosques in just a matter of years. And if we're not reaching women, we're not reaching half of our community. Our numbers, therefore, will shrink. We are already a small community in a country that is rapidly growing. What happens when your numbers go down and everyone else's numbers go up? I don't know, actually. I'm a humanities major. I have no idea. It's not a rhetorical question. I'm looking for some guidance here, or even a note card, but nothing. Now, here's the amazing thing. Islam came to this country in waves. The first large numbers of Muslims who came to this country were brought here against their will in the slave trade. People say anywhere between 10 to 30% of slaves who were brought to the United States were Muslim. They were not allowed to be Muslim, however. The Islam was literally often beaten out of them. The next major wave of Muslims who came in the late 19th and early 20th century, often from Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, territories of what was once the Ottoman Empire. They were not able to stick around either in large numbers, possibly because the national environment was hostile to them. Today, however, for the first time in American Muslim history, these two great streams of Islam in America, African American Muslims and Muslims of recent immigrant origin, are increasingly working together, talking, and find themselves in a climate that is welcoming to them. If we cannot capitalize on this moment, if we can't build our communities up in this moment, then it will not be because the environment is hostile to us. It will not be because there were no civil rights or concepts of pluralism or tolerance. It will be our own mistake. We will have failed ourselves. In order for a community to survive, it must have an anchoring institution. For our community, that is the mosque. And that's the value of the kind of research ISPU does. When I was growing up, the mosque did not mean much to me, if I'm honest with you. It seemed to me to be a place that reflected who my parents were and not me myself. When I went to college, however, I found myself suddenly in a space where I could help found a mosque or a community that could reflect me. And for the first time, I found validation in my identity around other people who were Muslim. The mosque that I was a part of was not, however, a primarily spiritual place. It was a place grounded in social justice, social work, identity, and inclusion. These things are also obviously very important. Recently, I spent a year in Dubai. I got to rent a Toyota Camry, and for some reason, every German tourist thought I was a cab driver. Either because German tourists cannot tell the difference between cars with white roofs and red roofs, or they simply look for a brown man behind the wheel, assuming that's what happened. When I was in Dubai, I noticed something that I found missing in a lot of American mosques, which was an excellence of spirituality. It helps when you have a lot of money. Every mosque I went to, and I went to a lot, seemed to have an imam who could have his own CD set. In case you're not as old as I am, then you have no idea what a CD set is, but it's okay. It's like a YouTube channel that doesn't work well. Congratulations also for inventing YouTube, Bay Area, and everything else you've done. And it was for the first time then I found a mosque as a spirituals place was something that really intrigued me and moved me and filled something in me that I didn't realize how much I needed. And when I came back to New York City, which is where I'd been living before, I came back to what is the largest Muslim city in the Western Hemisphere. Apologies, California, you have sunshine, we have rain. Ouch, sorry. I live in a neighborhood of New York which has thousands of Muslims from all over the world. There's Turks, There's Russians, there's Tatars, there's Kyrgyz, there's Uzbek, there's Kazakh, there's Pakistani, there's Bengali. And yet the mosques that I go to are completely exclusionary to me. Now, I know we talk a lot about being a minority, but we're not all minorities, right? It depends on what part of your identity you're looking at what time, right? I am a Pakistani Sunni Muslim. So in terms of demographics, I have things going in my direction, right? Something like 30% of the world's population and 35% by the end of the speech is Pakistani or Indian or Bengali, mashallah. Doing our part for the ummah. Just keeping it moving. Right? In the United States, I'm often in the majority within Muslim communities. I usually find myself in a situation where institutions are geared to me, even if I've not asked them to be that way. And yet I find myself in mosques where I don't have the first idea how to get through the front door other than literally to walk through the front door. I have no influence on decisions that are made, no idea who the board is, no way to shape the content. I find myself excluded for the first time in a very long time from a mosque that is part of my daily routine. And it made me realize that for a long time in my life, I had heard people talking about what it was like to be excluded from a mosque, but didn't really understand it until it happened to me. Because it's easy to simply take in someone saying, institutions don't speak for me. Right? It doesn't mean you actually understand it until you experience what it is like to be excluded. And when you are consistently, regularly excluded, you begin to feel that you will never be included. And it occurred to me, it took me 20-something years to be in this position, and all that time, what did I have to run on? Other than anecdotes. Right? Nice stories that I can use in speeches, but not data, not information, not facts, not polls, not surveys, not research that actually explains what the Muslim community is like. When I was growing up, I was the only Muslim in my school system, right? So I assumed that whatever happened to me was the norm among Muslims. So I figured that Muslim kids didn't date because girls didn't talk to me. So naturally, whatever happened to me was happening to everyone, right? So I was a sample size of one, and all these excellent things happened, right? Muslims are always picked last, right, in sports. Muslims sat in the front. We won't, it's just too painful. It's okay. That's why I put married in the bio. P.S. But the reason I think this information is so important, and the work that ISPU does is so important, is because as we move forward in our institutions, we realize that we've lost a lot of people along the way. And I think that's true. I think, unfortunately, that as we founded our institutions and built up our institutions, a lot of people fell by the wayside. They were excluded, turned away. They had no voice. They had no way of entering. And maybe those of us who were inside simply had no idea that they were on the outside, because we didn't know what was happening in our communities. We didn't understand the lay of the land. We didn't even know our own demographics. The first time I found out how many Muslims lived in New York City, I was utterly astonished. But once people became aware of those numbers, our entire mindset changed. When we realized that 12% of the public school population in New York City is Muslim, we realized that we would be an electoral force in this city for a very long time to come. That one statistic completely changed our view of what was possible, what was likely, what was doable, and what was necessary. And we need to get to a point now with our institutions that we see problems before they hit us on the head. We see the changing shape of our communities, and we can anticipate where we need to be so that we're there when that happens. One of the great problems in our history, and unfortunately our present, is that we have very few mechanisms to learn from our mistakes and to capitalize on our strengths, because we don't study ourselves. It's pretty remarkable that in many contexts and many communities, we haven't gotten to the point where we understand the importance of knowing who we are so that we can solve our own problems instead of waiting on people who may not have our best interests at heart. And it's remarkable when you think how many of us there are and how much money we have that we are only now getting there. But it is even more important to underline what we can do once we have the resources at our disposal. Where we can take this community and what we can do with this community. Now, a community is, at the end of the day, everyone who's in it, in all stages of life. That's the difference between a community and a grade in a school or a job environment. It's people in every stage of their life, from the very young to the very old. And as I said earlier, all of us at different points in our life need or expect or want different things from their community spaces. And if we understand that, we can build communities that engage all of us and deploy these strengths. I don't know what your specific careers or professions are. I can tell you that I'm a writer. I'm a commentator. Thanks to the great benefits of capitalism, enough money is made that I can go on TV and talk to people. It's kind of amazing, actually, when you think about it. You literally go on TV, and they put makeup on your face, and you talk for 30 seconds. And that's it. That's the whole thing. And there's enough money to do this like 24 hours a day. Jon Stewart once said that CNN, I can say this now, right? He said CNN was formed to answer a pressing question. Is there enough news to fill up a 24-hour news cycle? And the answer is no. But let's look around and look at the lay of the land. On the Republican side of our politics right now, the two leading candidates are trading places with each other. How? By knocking on us. The Canadian election, which just happened back on Monday, saw the conservative candidate who ran on Islamophobia get trounced. He ran on Islamophobia, and he was run out of office. Right? But there you go. That's pretty cool. But that means we have opportunities and we have challenges. Now, in my work, I just want to tell you, and this is how I want to close, I want to tell you how ISPU's work is important to me and how it can shape a lot more than we might even realize. Sometimes I go on TV and people ask me in 18 seconds to explain what is happening in Palestine to people who couldn't find Palestine on a map, even if it was a map of Palestine and labeled Palestine. Nevertheless, one makes a good effort. Occupation. Many times when I go on TV, I have to confront myths that people have. That Muslims are unusually violent, that Muslims are barbaric, that we are a 7th century people, that radicalism comes out of mosques. And if I say it doesn't come out of mosques, the first thing people always say is, well, maybe not out of your mosque. And now I can say, actually, I have research that tells me otherwise. It is important for us to be part of critical conversations. It's important for us to be in the room when people are talking about us. It's important for us to be heard when we are the topic of the conversation. But you can't be in the conversation if you aren't ready to speak when it's your turn. And when it is your turn, are you going to be able to speak authoritatively on what you are asked to speak about? A few months ago, David Cameron, Prime Minister of Britain, may he go the way of Stephen Harper, began releasing information about his new counterterrorism strategy. It was and is pretty worrying. I pitched an article to a media organization and I said, I want to write about this counterterrorism strategy and why it's important. And they said to me in more politely than this, that nobody cares about England. Seriously, American news, we don't care about anything other than America. Even if it's important in America, if there's a hurricane, the hurricane wins. That's American media if you want to understand it. It's nothing personal. It's not that they don't like you. The hurricane just matters more than you. But this is the Prime Minister of America's single most important ally, the United Kingdom, and nobody cared about the article because they said, who cares what David Cameron wants to do about counterterrorism? It doesn't matter to an American audience. Americans don't want to read about this stuff. And of course, last week when Donald Trump was asked about David Cameron's counterterrorism strategy, what did he say? He said, I think he has a lot of good ideas and I want to build on it. I want to take it one step further, and we should do the same thing they're proposing in the UK, which is what? If a person is accused of extremism and attends a mosque, then that mosque should be shut down, even if the mosque had absolutely nothing to do with it, right? Imagine that for a second. Your mosque, everything you have built over your life potentially, all the money, the space that you send your kids, that is your anchor for your family life, that you may have poured in blood, sweat, and tears and thousands of dollars, can be shut down because someone who attended the mosque did something stupid that the mosque itself was opposed to. That's what was being proposed. And of course, that matters to us because when people talk about David Cameron, it's 1 minute out of the news cycle for them. It's our life cycle for us. It is who we are as a community. Now, I think that what we do in the next few years is going to shape where this community goes. Because the Islamophobia we see right now will either prove itself to be a failing strategy, or it will prove to be a way to get votes and attention and money. And once people learn that they can get money and attention by bashing you, they will keep bashing you. If you can be punched and you can't punch back, you're going to get punched. It's kind of how it works. We learned this when we were like 5 or 6 years old, right? It's kind of how it works. And so the work that ISPU is doing is not just important because it empowers our community, but it gives us an ability to speak back at a time when it is really critical that we are able to speak back. And if I really want to distill it to a simple point, do you want to lose to Donald Trump? Because that's what we're really looking at right now. And I know you don't want to lose because this is the home of the Golden State Warriors, which I looked up on Google Translate and becomes the Golden State Mujahideen. And there will be a time when that is not terrifying to most Americans, when mosques are not places to be feared, protested, or, thank you, Barack Hussein Obama, avoided. I want us to support our institutions. And I want those institutions to carry us to the next step in our development as a community. I think what we have here is absolutely incredible. This is the wealthiest Muslim community in the world. And this is the only Western democracy where we have the numbers, the resources, and the potential to shape the world. Because we can be included in the most powerful country in the world. And whether or not we decide to doesn't just determine what happens to us, it determines what happens to a lot of other people in a lot of other places. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum.